Welcome to A Fine Time, The Nanny Revisited. This is a podcast about The Nanny, where we recap each episode and then discuss, sharing our own unique take on each episode. I'm Bernadette.
And I'm Debbie. Today we're talking about episode 98, You Bet Your Life.
Before we get into this week's episode summary, we have a brief programming note. Over the summer months, we are going to release a new episode every other week instead of every week.
Consider this our summer break for you. One less technological obligation every week so that you can spend more time outside. We're very interested in your wellness. This programming decision has absolutely nothing to do with our hectic schedules.
Absolutely nothing.
As usual, we'll start with a brief summary of the episode. Maxwell and Cece are responsible for planning a charity event to beautify New York. However, when speaking about the project, they failed to mention the involvement of the divine Miss M. Upon learning of Bette Midler's involvement, Fran decides she wants to do her part and offers to contribute to the items being auctioned off. Fran ultimately offers her own services, guilting Niles into doing the same. While Bette Midler thought childcare services for a day would be the lowest grossing item, she was wrong. Niles Butler's services for the day went for $37 to Cece as the highest bidder, while Fran's childcare services went for $5,000 to a child piano prodigy. Fran takes Keith, the piano prodigy, to Yetta's retirement home, where he witnesses the death of one of the residents and he swears off the piano forever. Back at the Sheffield home, Fran tries unsuccessfully to convince Keith to play again. Keith's abandonment of his musical gift has negative downstream effects. His father pulls his charitable contributions to the New York Restoration Project, and it looks like he's going to pull the $5 million he planned to invest in Maxwell's new show. However, at the very last minute and off camera, Gracie has convinced Keith to return to the piano, saving the day. Meanwhile, Cece has used her $37 investment to torture Niles. She turned him into a mechanic, a contractor, a fashion dummy, and a masseuse for Sylvia and Morty. Bernadette, do you have anything you want to add?
I do not.
All right, would you like to take us to scene one?
Yes, so we open this episode in the dining room. It's apparently breakfast time. The Sheffield family's all there. Niles is in there. And then Maxwell inquires to Niles, are there any more of these little sausage patties in the kitchen? Just then, Sylvia walks into the room with Fran, saying hello, and Niles turns to Maxwell and asks, does that answer your question? So Sylvia actually sits down in the chair that Fran usually sits in, and Fran just stays standing. But Sylvia starts talking to Maxwell, saying, there's a big article on the charity project. Why are you standing next to Fidel Castro? And Fran's like, Ma, that's Miss Babcock. Niles had the paper first.
Mhm.
So Maxwell even reads out, the title, Sheffield produces benefit for New York Restoration Project. And he talks about how he thinks, they're going to make a fortune. It's time that the fat cats put something back. And Sylvia says, fine, but I've already licked it, as she puts down like the little like muffin, right?
Biscuit.
Muffin back onto the plate. But yeah, Cece at this point walks in to the dining room and she's carrying some files and stuff, and she's lamenting about how she's so sick of planning charity events. How are we going to fit more people at the table, or for more people? And Niles, of course, says, give up your seat.
Mhm.
Cece turns to Niles and she's like, okay, listen up. I am busting my butt for a benefit that doesn't involve profit, and I've got PMS. The ice is thin. And Niles acknowledges that, with his expression. But Maxwell, in the meantime, has been looking at Cece's plans, and he says, good idea putting Tom at the table. And Fran's like, oh, so who's Tom? And does he have a Cruz, Hanks, or Selleck after his name? Maxwell says Rosenstein. And Fran's like, does he have a doctor before it? And Maxwell says, well, he happens to be one of the richest men in New York. And if schmoozed properly, we'll be investing $5 million in our next show. And Fran's like, wow, Never mind what he's got in front or after his name. Does he has a and Mrs. anywhere near it?
Correct.
And Max was like, look, Miss Fine, this event won't interest you. There's no single men, no shrimp, and no um no stars will be there. And Brighton, who's gotten up and is kind of standing next to his father with a thing of orange juice, says, what about Bette Midler? I thought she was coming. And of course, there's a big gasp from Fran, and Maxwell's like shooting Brighton a look, and Brighton's like, but I also thought I had an inheritance, and I'm probably wrong about that too. And he walks away.
Mm-hmm.
Sylvia goes on, oh, did I love Bette in First Wives Club? You know, like she found a theater that served real butter, not the BS canola oil.
Correct.
Uh, so Fran, of course, turns, first of all, walks up to Gracie. And it was like,
Mhm.
what's the divine Miss M in this house? And Gracie's kind of like squirming in her chair, like guiltily. Doesn't say anything, but
Well, so you have to know what Fran does, right? So Fran walks over to Gracie and she puts her hand on the table and is leaning over Gracie in a very intimidating type way.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
Gracie doesn't answer, but hangs her head in shame.
yes, yes. And then, so then, she cut, Fran prowls back towards Maxwell. And what's this on the day that I miraculously found a ticket to Victor Victoria on the front step? And of course, like Maxwell kind of has like a guilty expression on his face as well.
And he
And
also
ultimately, kind
hangs his head, just like
yeah,
Gracie did.
yeah. And ultimately, though, he says the auction's at 8. Dress formal, but I wasn't lying about the shrimp.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's the opening scene. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
Only that Fran was in one of her glorious bathrobes.
Yes, that is true. And it looks like she had like cups of tea or coffee or something on it.
Correct. That's all I wanted to add. All right. So scene 2 is in the office. Maxwell's sitting at his desk. Fran comes in with a box and she says to him that she brought some of her stuff that she wanted to donate to the auction. And so she starts to explain what's in the box. Now I've got my what's happening lunchbox. The Raj thermos is a little bit cracked, but I don't really think that it'll affect the value. And Maxwell sort of stops her and is like, well, Miss Fine, that's very sweet of you, but they're actually auctioning off items like this: Audrey Hepburn's Oscar, $30,000. Tennis match with Andre Agassi, $50,000. My friend's like, oh, well, I'm guessing that my autographed Donna Pesco TV guide won't bring it anywhere near that. And she like sits on his desk and she's like, oh, wait a minute. What do you think they would pay for a wise, responsible person to take care of their children for a day? And Max was like, now that's a very good idea. I might even bid on that. And he's like, oh, you mean you? And she like hops off the desk and she's like, excuse me, but what happened to the day when you actually tried to hide your horror? And Maxwell stammers and he's like, well, you see, the thing is, I'm afraid that you're so good that someone might try to steal you away from me. And Fran's like,
Mhm.
now, was that so hard?
Mhm.
Do you have anything you want to add?
I do not.
All right, take us to scene 3.
So we are now at the benefit, and we start by seeing like a young boy playing the piano. Um, I think it was Moonlight Sonata.
I think so.
Okay. Um, but then we kind of pan to where Fran is sitting with Maxwell at the table and she's yawning. And she makes a comment, we should all pop a tic tac because we are about to sleep together. And Cece's like, Miss Fine, that is Tom's son who is playing so beautifully. And Tom, of course, is sitting next to Cece, watching his son like proudly. And Tom says, yes, he's going to be a concert pianist. Um, and Fran's like, oh, my Uncle Benny was a musician. Actually, the monkey was the musician. Benny made the costumes.
Mm-hmm.
And Tom kind of just, instead of responding to that, turns to Maxwell and says, I've read the first act of the play. Um, and and I'm giving serious thought to, providing that 5 million investment. And Maxwell's like, oh, it's quite good. And Tom's like, dreadful. But I'm looking for a surefire tax write-off. So
Mhm.
he jumps in like, oh, look no farther. And here's Act Pew, accent
Mhm.
and hands him the script. Um, at that moment, we hear the host overhead announcing the host as Miss Bette Midler. And so Bette Midler comes out, and it's actually Bette Midler. It's not someone pretending to be Bette Midler.
Mhm.
And, Fran's like, oh, like, I just adore you. Cause she's walking by, and Fran kind of stops her as she's making her way by. And Fran's gushing about how she just adores her. And Bette's like, oh, I adore you. I love your accent. And Fran's like, oh, I got it from Queens. And Bette's like, oh, same with my me and my career.
Mhm.
Obviously meaning different things, but
Correct.
Bette goes to where she's supposed to be, doing being the host. She has her mic and she starts off, by making some jokes. She's like, oh, who wants the antique chest with the original knobs? And she's kind of gesturing to her bust. And
Mhm.
she's like, oh, like, that's a joke. Put your hand down, Rabbi.
Uh-huh.
And then she makes a comment about cleaning up New York. You got to take all the trash out. She's done her part. She's moved to LA.
Correct.
And so, anyway, now it's time to start the auction portion. And she says, "Oh," and Fran's like, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna go to the bathroom and be right back," because Bet's like, "Okay, let's start with the cheap items." But of
Correct.
course, as soon as Fran kind of make gets up to make her way to the bathroom, Bet says, "Item number one, Fran fine." And so
Mhm.
Fran goes up, and Bet's like, "Oh, it's you," like they're kind of talking. And again, Fran's still kind of gushing over Bet, saying how awe-inspiring it is that she had. How did it feel to have a baby at 40? And Bet's like, let me tell you. Ah! And uh, but then she like again starts the auction, and she's like kind of gives Fran a look, because she's talking about Fran being like, who would like a day with a professional caregiver. She's like, let's start at $20.
Mhm.
And the man raises his paddle, 22.50. Another man raises his paddle and bets like 25, anyone. And then at this point, like there starts some kind of music.
Well, even before that, did you catch it? Which I thought the timing was weird on,
Uh-huh.
because Bette Midler says to Fran, "Girl, you're on fire."
Yeah, and it was sarcastic, I took it as.
Yeah.
Um, but then there starts like a beat, almost like kind of like a soft like drum cymbal thing. I don't know. There's some music.
Percussion. Let's
And
say percussion.
yes, and Fran starts kind of dancing, like moving her body. And suddenly someone offers 10,000, no, sorry,
Yeah.
$1,000.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had an extra zero. I'm like, no, 10,000 is not correct. They offer 1,000. So jumping from 25 to 1,000 is pretty good.
I would say so.
um, and again, like Bet and Fran are having this kind of exchange where Fran's like, oh, I saw that on Gypsy. And that's like the TV version. And, I think she says that Fran says that's the best one or something. I don't know.
Is there another one or something like that?
Yeah, yeah. And Bet's like, "Oh, I myself bid 2,000." But anyway, it keeps going. 3,000, 4,000, and then we hear a male voice going, "Take it off, honey. Show us some skin." And we pan to see that both Cece and Maxwell are looking over their shoulder at Niles, who is the one
Mhm.
who wrote that. And Niles is like, "Sorry, sir, just trying to drive the bidding up."
Mhm.
Um, But anyway, we finally land on the winning bid, which is $5,000 to bid her 550. And, Maxwell's like, who the devil is, bid her 550? And the camera pans to Tom's son, the pianist.
Hmm.
Kind of just sitting there with like a smile on his face and his little bidding paddle. And yeah, Fran has been auctioned off for $5,000
For one day.
for one day. Um, do you have anything you'd like to add to that scene?
No.
Okay, will you take us back to the Sheffield residence?
Sure. So scene 4 opens with Fran and Gracie in like near the stairs in the foyer, and Fran's explaining to her that I'm sorry I can't spend time with you, but a little boy bid a lot of money to spend the day with me. And Gracie's like, well, I've got $5,000. I'd pay that to have you all to myself for the day. And Fran hugs her, oh sweetie. And then she like think it's clear that she's thinking about it, and then she's like, no, it wouldn't be right. It wouldn't be right.
Yeah.
And Niles comes in and he's complaining to Fran that, well, if you hadn't donated your services, I wouldn't have been shamed into donating mine. And Fran's like, oh, big deal. It's one day. You did a good deed. You raised some money for charity. And in walks Cece saying, best 37 bucks I ever spent. And it's clear that she's the one who bid on Niles' services and won. And so she says to him, you can start by washing the car and changing the oil. You don't have a car. And she's like, oh, I rented one.
Yep.
Poor Niles. And Maxwell comes in to talk to Fran, and he's like, Miss Fine, before Tom and his son get here, remember we have a little saying in the theater. Meanwhile, by this point, like we've migrated into the living room fully. And he's like, we have a little saying in the theater, mess up with the investor, move back in with your mother. And Fran's like, well, I have a saying too, mess with the nanny, please.
Yep.
And and she smiles at him, and he looks kind of awkwardly at her. And then the doorbell rings, and Fran's like, oh, I'll get it. And the two of them are walking towards the door, and she's like, isn't that a cute saying? And he's like, yes, very funny, Miss Fine. She's like, thank you. And so she opens the door, and Maxwell greets Tom and Keith. Do come in, welcome both of you. And Tom says to Maxwell, I read the second act. It's actually quite good. And Maxwell's like, oh, we'll fix that. And then Tom's like, okay, good. And so Maxwell tells Tom to go into the study and that he'll be right in to see if we can suck the funny out of Act 2. And he reminds Fran that the child is a gifted pianist and to make sure that he practices at least 2 hours like his father asked. And Fran's like, sure, but the kid's got to have some fun too. And then she turns to little Keith and is like, have you ever seen a lady get her hair highlighted? Sounds like lots of fun.
Yeah. I do want to point out to you, I don't know if you noticed this little snippet of incontinuity in the shot, because there's a time when at first when Keith kind of goes up to Fran, he's wearing glasses. He walks in with glasses. Then there's a little bit of a scene where he's kind of walking next to Fran without glasses. And then the next thing we know, he's back in glasses.
I did not notice that.
It was very quick, but I was like, whoa, that was obviously done at different times.
Interesting. I did not notice that. Thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah, it was very quick. I even had to rewind to confirm that his glasses are actually off for 2 seconds.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Would you like to then take us to scene 5 otherwise?
Yeah, so we're at Yetta's home, and Fran's walking down the hallway to it with Keith, and she's like, oh, thank you for offering to play piano for my grandma's rest home. And Keith's like, when did I agree to that? And Fran's like, at the Clinique counter, don't you remember? It's when we were getting our eyebrows reshaped. So they walk in the room, and Fran greets Yetta. Hi, Yeti. Has she ever referred to Yetta as Yeti before?
I think she has.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, she definitely has, because we saw the episode with I think the grandmas. That was the one where Fran's parents separated briefly, and Fran definitely greets them as Nettie and Yeti.
Okay, gotcha. But so there actually are quite a few people in the room, but Fran's like, where is everybody? And Yetta's like, oh, exhausted. The cable went out last night, so we broke into the vitamin E. That day room was like Caligula.
Mm-hmm.
And this man suddenly approaches, like right up to Keith and Freya, and is like, "You see that thumb?" And he's holding out his hand. "I lost it on Iwo Jima. That's my big toe there. Couldn't tell, right?" And
Mm-hmm.
so Fran's like telling Keith, "Go play Moonlight Sonata. Um, don't be worried if no one is impressed. Most heard, it played by Beethoven himself." So Keith is sitting at the piano about to play, and that same man who showed him his toe thumb says, "Play something with
Have a Nagila beat.
yes." My handwriting once again was indiscernible, but yes.
That's fine. It's also Hebrew, so I
Yeah.
understand why you would pause.
So so Keith starts, and it actually sounds like a classical piece, but then the man's like, "Oh yeah, great," and he starts singing Hello Dolly and is like trying to get everybody into it, and then he suddenly collapses next
Mm-hmm.
to the piano. And nobody rushes to him.
Nope.
Instead, Fran goes up to Keith and is trying to like distract him, like, "Keith, it's all right. He's just taking a break." And she like kind of like kicks the man's like, or like moves his legs with her feet so that they're no longer quite as visible
Mm-hmm.
um, to Keith. And then anyway, we hear though that he can't, what's that? He's taking a little break. Um, he's just resting, right, Yetta? And Yetta's like, "Sure." And then Yetta, who is also now sitting on the piano bench with both Fran and Keith, says, "See that man over there? He's next in line. Next in line for that Italian guy's corner room with the bidet. Can you play the tarantella?"
Tarantella.
Tarantella. Um, but again, this man is still collapsed on the floor and absolutely knows no one has made any move to check on him at this
Correct.
point. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
I do not.
Okay, will you take us to the kitchen?
Sure. So Maggie's like making herself a sandwich, and in comes Niles from the side door, and he explains that he just spent 4 hours putting together a gazebo for Miss Babcock's terrace. And Maggie responds, "Miss Babcock doesn't have a terrace." And Niles is like, "Now we both know." And in comes Cece, and she's holding a garment bag, and she says, "Chop, chop, I need to have my aunt's dress." And Niles is like, "Since when do you sew?" And she responds, "Since I spent $37 on a dummy."
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's the
Yeah,
scene. Would you
yeah.
like to
But
take
then
us
I think they hear the discordant piano, right?
just a little bit? Yeah.
So then we shift back into the back part of the living room where the piano is, and we see Fran, like, Keith is sitting at the piano, and Fran has his hands and is like trying to make him play, and Yetta and Val are also there with them. And Fran's like, "Play, play," and Keith's like, I can't, I don't ever want to play again." And Fran's like, "Maybe a nice piece of cheesecake would induce a little muskrat love." And Keith's like, "I can't eat when I'm upset." And Fran's like, "Oh, that's right. Your mother is a Gentile."
Mm-hmm.
And then Yetta's like, "Oh, maybe if you play at our home, you'll snap out of it." "No, wait. They don't want piano players. Some kid just killed a guy." And then Yetta and Keith like go off, like off towards the kitchen, or
Mm-hmm.
so Val and Fran are the only ones left. And Fran's like, "Oh my gosh, if he's this traumatized from seeing, a guy die in front of him, what's he gonna do when Mr. Sheffield tears me apart?
Right.
He's gonna turn into Tommy." And Val's like, "I know what he's going through." I believe it's her grandfather's lung machine went out.
Yep.
Uh, right when she was there, she had just brought a tape of their glee club, and just when she found a place to plug it in, he went. There's
Mm-hmm.
like a bit of a pause, and Fran's like, Val, I didn't know you had a tape of our glee club.
Uh-huh.
Yep. And but anyway, so
It's a little
Val's like,
awkward.
yeah, Val's like, maybe it'll be fine. Maybe his parents will be fine with it. Like my parents were fine, after I decided to quit music after 7 years of lessons. And Fred's like, yeah, but you knew you were never going to be great at playing the triangle, Val. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and again, Fran's worried about when Maxwell's going to find out. Like, how long can she delay this? Um, and then we hear a Miss Fine. And so she's worried. And she says, as she's like rushing out the door, like, there goes seeing the English patient. And that's
Mm-hmm.
that. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
No. So Fran goes into the office where Maxwell's sitting. I think he knows why he is calling him. Says, Mr. Sheffield, just because I've deprived the world of the next Victor Borg doesn't mean that his father's going to take out the $5 million from your show. And Maxwell pauses, and I think he takes his glasses off, and he says, Miss Fine, I was just calling to see if you took my white out again for your French tits. You what? What have you done to Tom's son? And Fran's like, oh, I took him to get us home, and a man with a toe on his thumb died in front of him. Max is like, oh my God, I can't believe this. Fran's like, neither could I until I shook hands with the Bunyan. Look, Mr. Sheffield, even if the worst happens, you'll get another investor for your show. And Max was like, not after I spent a week taking the story and jokes out of it. Let's just hope that Midler's charity is smart enough to cash that check fast. And Fran and Maxwell are on opposite sides of the desk. Fran has her back to the door. And so she says, look, he's not going to take it out on the whole showbiz community just because I made one itty bitty mistake. And as she says this, angry Bette Midler sneaks in behind her and says, don't bet the kibbutz, booby. The kid called his father and now he's pulling all his money out of my charity. And so Fran, of course, has recognized she's there, has turned around, and she's like, oh, that little pisher must have called him when I took him into Bloomingdale's. And Max is like, you went to Bloomingdale's after someone had died? Fran's like, it always makes me feel better. And then she turns her attention to Bette Midler. Miss Midler, I'm so sorry. I usually never make mistakes like this. Ignore his shocked expression. Listen, I'll do anything to make it up to you. Just tell me what I should do. And Bette Midler's response is, start running. And so then we have one of these weird like chase scenes where they're running throughout the house, and like Fran is in front of Bette Midler, and Bette Midler's trying to hit her with her purse. And like they run through, the behind the piano, like behind the glass doors, kind of like Fran, her sister and brother-in-law did, when Niles was doing the Backers audition many moons ago. They run through the kitchen where they run past Niles is up on a soapbox, for lack of a better word, and he's dressed up. He has his clothing on under the dress he's wearing for Cece, who's hemming it, and he says to her, Miss Midler, I'm one of your biggest fans. And she stops and she looks at him and says, that's a shocker. And then so like Fran has run up the back stairs, and then they're running down the main staircase in the front. And Fran's like, stop hitting me with that purse. What's wrong with this picture? And Bette Midler's like, I give up. And Fran's like, we're Jewish, we're running, and there's macaroons over there. And they walk over to the table in the front where there's a pile of macaroons. Are they fresh? Asks Bette. And then they both look at each other. Who cares? And then they hear piano music coming from the living room, and they glance over and they see that Gracie's sitting there with Keith, and Maxwell comes out and he's like, Miss Fine, how did you do that? And Fred's like, it's not important how. What's important is it was done. And then she goes over to Gracie and says to her, how was it done? And Gracie stands up and says, I think I've learned a thing or two from somebody around here. She tosses her hair. And Fran and Bette look at each other and say, it was me. And so Bette says to Maxwell, okay, Ringo, so are we back in the saddle, babe? And he's like, yeah, it seems that way. You get your parts cleaned, I get to do my show. Now I just have to persuade Tom that the third act is worse than the first two. And Fran's like, well, if push comes to shove, you'll just cast it really bad. And in walks Niles in the aunt's getup. And Fran's like, and there's your leading lady now. And before I ask if there's anything you want to add, I realized that I should have noted that when Gracie stood up and walked out, Tom's son followed her.
Yes. Kind of trailed after her, obviously crushing on her.
Correct. Is there anything else you want to add?
I do not.
All right. Would you like to take us to the last scene?
Yes. So we are now in the kitchen and Cece's on the phone and she's telling whoever's on the other side, oh, you don't have to thank me. You can just finish out the hour and send him home. She hangs up and even the caption notes, it is devious laughter.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Do you want me to continue or you want to take over from here?
You can continue.
So we cut to Niles giving Sylvia a massage.
Mm-hmm.
And, Sylvia's like, oh, all those years of needing dough have really paid off. And then she's even like, why don't we just take everything off? I'm not shy. And so, of course, Niles gets a wide-eyed kind of look. And then we cut to a little bit later where Niles is saying how much longer. And now the person we see on the bed is a man who is Morty. Again, we only see the back of him. Like he's actually angled in such a way that like, that's not how you get a massage.
No.
It's clear that they're hiding the face and all of that. And Morty says 15 minutes. And he's like, Niles is like, but you said that 15 minutes ago. And he's like, well, I'm going off of the VCR clock. And, we cut to the VCR clock, which is just flashing the 12 o'clock. It's blinking as in it was not programmed. And Niles is just like, you have 5 minutes to go. And Morty's like, well, if that's the case, let's take it all off. I'm not embarrassed. And so Niles carefully takes off Morty's toupee and begins to kind of massage the top of Morty's head. And that is the episode.
Correct. Before we get into our shticks, this kind of relates to one of our shticks, but I'm just curious. Did you recognize the voice of Morty Fine?
I didn't.
Okay. I'll then save it for our notable New Yorker segment because he is a notable New Yorker.
Okay.
Is there anything you want to talk about before we get into our shticks, I should ask?
I guess some of what I want to say can go in the shticks. So I'll just keep it. Is there anything you want to talk about?
Nope. I'm ready to talk about favorite fashion and not so favorite fashion.
Let's get into favorite fashion.
Did you have any?
I actually kind of liked her outfit that she wears when she has her day with Keith, where it's like black on the top and like little piano keys on the skirt. Just because I thought that was kind of clever.
I agree. That's also my favorite outfit.
Yeah. So again, it's like black on top and then like a black skirt with like the white piano keys like at the bottom. But yeah. So I would say that's probably my favorite. I did want to talk about what she wore to the auction.
Me too. Would you like to describe it?
I think you do a better job of describing things if you don't mind.
No, I'm happy to. I feel like we need to describe it before we can adequately discuss it. So it's like a lilac periwinkle purple outfit. And I say outfit because it's not a dress. It has the least objectionable part is that it has a purple like shawl, like that matches the outfit. But the rest of it is, it kind of looks like a sports bra with like a scoop neck. It has like the tank top, and then it comes down to just basically where her ribs would end, not even where her ribs end, before her ribs end. And then she's wearing a long skirt that has slits that's in the same color, same fabric, and the fabric looks like it's, you know, very light. I'm not sure I'm doing this justice after you said that I'll do a better job of it than you would.
No, no, no. You're doing great. But it's suffice it to say, it's not formal wear,
correct.
as
It looks like she
Maxwell explicitly told her
dresses
that it was not
formal.
formal. Yeah,
Exactly. To me, it looks like she would have been better off wearing that at the beach somewhere.
yeah. It was very flowy. Um, and again, a lot of her midriff is showing, so it's kind of ironic later when Niles yells out, you know, show some skin. She's already showing some skin.
She's already shown a lot of skin.
Yes.
And like, what would she have taken off that would have been socially acceptable? Nothing.
Nothing. Nothing. So, but yeah, it was definitely not formal wear.
No.
And I'm surprised kind of that nobody made a comment to her about it, because that would have been the prime opportunity for Cece, for instance, to make a comment on it. Instead, it's just ignored.
Correct. Which seems like, I also don't know how she left the house like that, because I mean, she's a fashionista. I think we can say that. We know she has a very large closet full of, you know, formal wear, which we know she got from cousin Toddy. So I don't know why she would have even like considered that as an option.
Yeah, agreed.
What did you think of Cece's outfit?
We don't see, like, we're talking about at the
Yeah, we only
auction.
see half of it.
Yeah, again, that was more formal.
Correct.
Like more in tune with what you would expect to wear at such a function.
Correct. And now Cece, every part of what we see of Cece's outfit is more formal. So Cece has an updo, all of her hair is up in a big bun, and then she has a black halter top with like silver thread, which also looks very 90s to me. And then like between the two of them is Maxwell and his tux. Like, I'm sorry, I still can't get over what Fran wore and how it doesn't fit in with, you know, where she was going.
Yeah. Agreed.
So,
was there any other fashion you wanted to talk about?
no. How about you?
No.
All right.
So we can move on to notable New Yorkers.
All right. Can I start with the notable New Yorker I've already previewed?
Yep.
So Morty Fine was played by Morty Drescher, Fran's father.
Okay.
And this is his second appearance this season. We saw him in seasons 1, 2, and 3 previously, one episode in each of those. And we will see him twice more in 5 and twice in 6. So I just wanted to point that out because I was like, that voice is so familiar. That's why. All right, sorry. Now we move on to other notable New Yorkers.
Yeah, and the biggest in this episode, of course, is Bette Midler, and her name's even in the title of this particular episode. Episode title is "You Bet Your Life," but spelled Bette.
Correct. So Bette Midler is an American actress, author, comedian, singer who has won numerous awards during her 50-plus year career. She has starred in Hello Dolly, Hocus Pocus, and an off-Broadway production of Fiddler on the Roof. She is known, as we learned in this episode, as the Divine Miss M. And that's according to our friends at Wikipedia.
Fidel Castro.
A Cuban revolutionary and Marxist-Leninist politician who led Cuba from 1959 until 2008. That's according to our friends at Wikipedia.
Now, does the New York Restoration Project even exist, or is
yes, it does.
Oh, it does? Okay.
It's an organization that, and I quote, partners with local communities, public agencies, and the private sector to acquire, create, maintain, and program public open space throughout New York City. That's according to our friends at nyrp.org.
So Fran inquires who's Tom, and does it have Cruise, Hanks, or Selleck after the name?
All of those are actors. Tom Cruise is an American actor and producer, currently one of the highest paid actors. He's known for roles in A Few Good Men, Jerry Maguire, Rain Man, and The Firm. That's according to our friends at Wikipedia. Tom Hanks is an American actor and filmmaker known for comedic and dramatic roles, including A League of Their Own, Forrest Gump, and Saving Private Ryan, also according to our friends at Wikipedia. And Tom Selleck is an American actor known for his roles in Magnum PI, Three Men and a Baby, and he is currently a spokesman for the NRA, also according to our friends at Wikipedia.
I had no idea on that last bit.
That's why I included it. I try to make our podcast as educational as possible.
First Wives Club.
A 1996 film starring Bette Midler, telling the story of three divorced women who seek revenge on their ex-husbands who left them for younger women. And that's according to our friends at Wikipedia. Oh, sorry, I take that back, at imdb.com. My mistake.
Victor Victoria.
Where do I have my note on that? A 1995 Broadway musical based on the 1982 film about a soprano who poses as a male female impersonator. And that's according to our friends at Wikipedia.
What's Happening?
An American sitcom from 1976 to 1979 based loosely on the film Cooley High. A sequel in the 1980s was titled What's Happening Now? And that's according to our friends at Wikipedia.
I'm assuming Raj is then a character.
Raj was played by Robert Thomas, and he was one of the stars. Yes. Also according to Wikipedia.
I believe we've talked about Audrey Hepburn before.
I truly can't recall, but so I have a bio for her.
Okay.
A British actress and humanitarian who died in 1993. She was ranked as the third greatest female screen legend from classic Hollywood by the American Film Institute. And that's according to our friends at Wikipedia.
We've talked about the Oscars numerous times. We've also, I believe we've talked about Andre Agassi before.
Yes, we have, on multiple occasions, actually. He's a tennis player. Yeah.
Donna Pascal.
An American actress and director who's best known for her role in Saturday Night Fever. That's according to our friends at Wikipedia.
Did you put down TV Guide?
I did not.
So it's like, again, a specific back in the day. I don't even know if it's still around. Maybe. But they would have it was actually like a little magazine included that talked about the programming and all that kind of stuff. Various shows. So again, I don't know what the state of that is at this point. So then let's see. While I look, do you have another one?
It does look like it. So according to Variety magazine, TV Guide continues to clock in a rate of about 1 million readers. So.
Oh wow.
Although I think so, according to Variety magazine, the headline from February of 2023, TV Guide magazine launches new print monthly, TV Insider, focused on streaming. So it does seem like they still exist.
Right.
So
Gypsy.
Yes.
Is that what we have next?
Yes. And I did the 1993 television movie version of the Broadway hit, telling the story of the life and times of a stripper and her mother. And that's according to our friends at Wikipedia. Oh no, I take it back. That one's IMDb too. I can't read my own notes. Sorry, IMDb.
That's fine. So Caligula.
A 1979 erotic drama about the rise and fall of Caligula, the Roman emperor. And that is according to our friends at Wikipedia.
And fun fact, do you know what Caligula means in Latin?
I do not.
Little boots.
It means little boots?
Yeah. Iwo Jima.
A major battle during World War II between the U.S. Marine Corps and the Navy on the one hand, and the Japanese Army on the other. That's according to our friends at Wikipedia.
Moonlight Sonata.
Beethoven's Piano Sonata, number 14. Also according to Wikipedia.
And again, Beethoven along with that.
A German pianist and composer whose work ranks among the most performed in classical music. And that's according to Wikipedia.
I believe Hello Dolly's come up before. Am I
It
wrong?
it has.
Hmm. And then
The
did
tarantella.
you? Yeah, I was gonna ask if you put that down.
I did. So the tarantella is an Italian. It's basically a group of Italian folk dances that were named after a wolf spider believed to be venomous,
Venomous.
poison. Yes, I'm just gonna say poisonous. Which
Although those are different. Being venomous and poisonous, I think there's a distinction.
oh, is there?
I
Okay,
think
poisonous is so much easier to pronounce, and I don't sound like an idiot when I'm trying to say it. But so it's named after a specific wolf spider, which is believed to be venomous. There you go. And apparently led to a hysterical condition called tarantism, which basically people, I think, couldn't stop dancing and then they died.
hmm So just quickly, poison is a toxin that gets into the body by inhaling, swallowing, or absorption through skin. Venomous, it's when the toxin is injected into you.
Huh.
So term venomous is applied to organisms that bite or sting to inject their toxins, whereas poisonous applies to, and of course, it ends right there. Um, but yeah, as I'm assuming to like things that actually like
That don't
plant.
bite you, but
Yeah.
so like for example, a poison arrow frog, if you it doesn't bite or ingest or inject its poison into you, but if you were to lick it, which we do not recommend, that would be poisonous, not venomous.
Oh yeah. So yeah, poisonous applies to organisms that unload toxins when you eat them. Yeah.
Okay,
So poison's like you're eating them. Venomous is they are biting you or stinging you and
got
like
it.
actively infecting. Sorry, that's like a little random aside.
No, that's fine, but I'm just gonna again remind our lovely listeners, do not lick poison arrow frogs. Do not try to get bitten by venomous spiders. These are poor
Yeah.
choices.
Yeah. And that's our little the more you know, our little
Correct.
PSA for today.
Correct.
Yeah, kind of ironic in this particular episode. But anyway, Muskrat Love.
So we've actually talked about it before, but it's a soft rock song by Willis Allen Ramsey depicting romance between Susie and Sam, who are muskrats. And that's according to our friends at Wikipedia.
The English Patient.
A 1996 romantic war drama, which was based on the 1992 novel by the same name. And that's according to our friends at Wikipedia.
I remember having to like actually read and watch the movie in college. So
Oh, I haven't seen it or read it.
random fact. Yeah. Victor Borg
Borg? Yeah,
Borg, sorry.
I don't know. Danish American conductor, pianist, and comedian whose nicknames included the Great Dane, the Clown Princes of Denmark, must be the Clown Prince of Denmark, and the Unmelancholy Dane. And that's according to our friends at Wikipedia.
hmm I don't know. Did you put Bloomingdale's? I feel like it comes up so often.
I did not, because just for that very reason.
Yeah. So while Bet is chasing Fran, did you notice what song was playing in the background?
I couldn't make it out. Did you?
Yeah, it was like, oh no, okay, what's it called though? It's like this 40s song, the Boogie Bugle Boy of Company B.
Oh, okay.
Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy. And I guess like originally it would have been a song by like the Andrews sisters, but I guess Bette Midler did a version of it as well. So it's the
Oh,
Boogie Woogie
interesting.
Bugle Boy. And the Andrews sisters, I think, sang it first, but apparently, again, Bette Midler did a version of it, which would then make sense why. Because at first I was like, why did they choose this particular song for the chase scene?
Mhm.
But I guess she did a remake of it in 1972 on her The Divine Miss M album. Um, so okay, that actually makes a little more sense than that. Anyway, uh, Bet calls um, Mr. Sheffield Ringo.
Definitely a reference to the Beatles and
Yeah,
Ringo
but I
Starr.
don't understand why Ringo in particular.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Probably because Ringo is the most unique name of the Beatles, I think.
maybe.
And they're
That
British, and Maxwell's British.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That was what I took it to mean.
Yeah, that makes sense. Did you have anything else?
Just whiteout.
Hmm.
That's the trademark for correction fluid manufactured by Bic. And that's according to our friends at Wikipedia.
Okay. So then are we ready for some Yiddish cup?
Yes, we are. So I'm going to start where I always start. Shrimp and
Yeah.
sausage are not kosher. Just
Yeah.
FYI.
And
Um,
it's such a large part of her personality in this series.
I know it's
Shrimp.
driving me nuts. Like watching this with a critical eye is just making you like want to write Fran Drescher and be like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, did you ever notice it when you were younger?
no, I didn't pay close enough attention, clearly.
Mm-hmm.
But like it bugs me now.
Yeah.
Um, okay. So Bette Midler is Jewish, in case you didn't know that. Um, Rabbi, that's part of the punchline that Miss Midler makes when she starts the auction. Rabbi means teacher. It's also the name of the synagogue's religious leader. So they're like the person who, you know, typically is in charge of religious practice at a synagogue. Hava Nagila, we've talked about before, but I actually did a little bit more of a deep dive into it this time. It's in 1918. It was written in 1918 and it's a Jewish folk song, making it one of the first modern folk songs in Hebrew. It's performed at many Jewish celebrations like weddings, B'nai Mitzvah, etc. But what I thought was really interesting is that it was written to celebrate the British victory over the Ottomans in 1917 and the Balfour Declaration. And that's according to our friends at Wikipedia. Um, Kibbutz is a word we came across before. If you recall, Maggie got to the whole Sheffield family, and Fran went to a kibbutz over winter break. So it's a collective community. Bubby typically means grandmother, but it's also used as a term of affection. Pisher means youngster. And then the last thing I'll comment on is Fran says to Keith, oh, after she asks him, like, oh, well, will a little piece of cheesecake induce some muskrat love? He's like, I can't eat when I'm upset. And Fran's like, oh, that's right. I forgot your mother's a Gentile. She's kind of poking fun at the stereotype of Jews eating their feelings. And yes, it is a stereotype, but it does have some basis in fact. So most life cycle events are actually accompanied by food. So for example, if someone gets married, there tends to be a meal. At a funeral, after a funeral, I should say, not at the funeral, after a funeral, during when people pay Shiva calls, they bring food. At B'nai Mitzvah or B'nai Mitzvah, there is food. At a baby naming or a birth, there's food. So like we like to pair food with our,
Mhm.
events. So
It kind of reminds me when Maxwell and Niles were having that conversation as to which Jewish holiday, and they would say
mhm,
something and then say, and then you stuff yourself.
correct,
Hmm.
correct. Our holidays also typically have food associated with them, or in Yom Kippur's case, no food. That's intentional.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I think
Okay.
that's everything. Did I miss anything?
I think like again later on, there's a similar kind of like reference to that stereotype when Fran's like, "What's wrong with this picture?" We're
Mm,
Jewish and there's macaroons over there.
yeah, okay, that's actually a good one. So what's interesting when you think about macaroons, most people think of French macaroons. Those are the like circular, but they're like flat on top, colorful little cookies. They're
Hmm.
Jewish macaroons, which are a Passover delicacy, if you will. They're made with coconut and not flour, which is how they're kefir pea. And they always taste like coconut, no matter what flavor you buy, because they're made with coconut.
Oh, interesting.
And if you don't like coconut, you tend not to like them very much,
Yeah. Yeah.
like me. So yeah,
Okay. Are we ready for some 90s nostalgia then?
yes, we are.
You go
I'm like,
first.
old cars.
Hmm. There was also a scene of the New York skyline that had the Twin Towers in
Correct.
it.
Correct. Cece coming in with that giant pile of papers and like all of her planning. If this were to be recorded today, she would have just walked in with her laptop or a tablet, or
Mm-hmm.
excuse me, even just her phone. Um,
Mm-hmm.
she, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
she wouldn't
The
have all
V
those papers.
Yeah, the VCR clock at the end, like that was blinking 12.
Mhm. Correct. Um, uh, little Keith probably would have had his own cell phone, and so he would
Yep.
have more easily been able to text his dad to seek help.
Yep. Yeah. I feel like also like with social media and all that kind of stuff today, like that opening scene where we hear about that article about the event and they're trying to keep it from Fran that Bette Midler's involved. Like she could have found out, more easily these days
Correct.
with like social media and all of that. Because I would
Correct.
imagine she would probably follow her on like Twitter or like other social media platforms.
I would
I
think
would.
so. Yeah. Um, I also think the starting bid for Fran's services would be a lot higher today instead of $20.
Mm-hmm.
Um, not quite sure they would have actually gone for $5,000 then or now, but they definitely would have started at more than 20.
Mm-hmm. Well, that whole dynamic between Fran and Bet was just like odd to me.
It was super odd
Like you
because
couldn't tell like if they got along or not because again, did give her like a almost like a dismiss it or like I don't know. Look, whenever she started it out at 20, like I
she
don't know.
definitely gave Fran a dismissive, judgy look.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know. It was odd that whole dynamic in this episode.
It was very odd. I agree. And then
But yeah,
I'm out if you don't have any.
yeah, I think I'm out as well.
Okay. We can't add to our kiss count. Fran
Unfortunately.
doesn't exactly. Fran doesn't bring up the thing,
Mhm.
unfortunately. And so I think it's time for future fun.
It is. Do you have any for us this week?
I always have future fun for us. I don't know what I'm going to do when we get to the end of the series, and there will be no future fun ahead of us. All right. So first, I want to just when rewatching the episode today made me think. So Cece obviously was the high bidder for Niall's services, which also, by the way, I feel like probably would have gone for more, and it would have been someone other than Cece. But
Hmm.
just a thought. Um, I can't remember if it's season. I think it's season 6 where Cece is like trying to like she's gained a little weight because the actress had a baby, which by the way is just not at all acknowledged. Like the
Hmm.
character, there's no like nothing. There's just like hiding her behind these giant props. And she makes a comment about
Hmm.
watching Seinfeld where they did the same thing. So
Hmm.
it's kind of like this running joke. But anyway, after she's had her baby, after Lauren Lane has had her baby, Cece's still a bit heavier than she was, which makes sense. That's what happens when bodies gestate and grow. They're humans. But it's sort of this joke where she's says something to Niles about maybe he'd be willing to help someone lose some weight and someone who's looking for a workout buddy. And he's like, well, what would be involved with that? And she's like, oh, you know, like take a towel and wipe the sweat from her chest and be your workout buddy, blah blah blah. And he's like, okay, sure. And then out walks Sylvia, who wants to get back to a size 6.
Hmm.
And the first task for Niles is to help her get into her leotard. And
Hmm.
needless to say, Niles is not thrilled by this. So that's one of the things that this made me think of. Um, I'm glad you were able to identify the Boogie Woogie Bugle Boys song as being performed by Bette Midler, because at the very end of this season, so we've got 3 more episodes before the end of the season, we have a guest star of Celine Dion who performs the song It's All Coming Back to Me, now.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's definitely back to me now, which I thought was hers originally, but she actually did a remake of it. It was originally done by, I think, Pandora Boys
Hmm, I
or
didn't know that.
someone. Yeah, I learned that today. So I thought that was interesting. But she'll be on the episode Fran's Gotta Have It at the very end of the season. And just a little fun fact about that episode: Maxwell's going to go to England to try to talk to Celine Dion to try to convince her to do Broadway, and Fran, at Val's urging, blows all of her frequent flyer miles to follow him to England to try to rekindle the passion they had in Paris. It goes just as well as you can imagine.
Mhm.
And by that, I mean, not well at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we've got some fun
Okay.
ahead of us.
Okay. So then now it's time for episode rating.
Yes, ma'am. I think it's your
Okay.
turn.
It is. So just as a reminder to our for our lovely listeners, we rank each episode from 1 to 5 lipsticks, with 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest. But it doesn't actually mean anything. It's all, we reserve the right to change our rating at a later date. Um, so yeah, I go first this week.
Thank God. I love it when it's your turn.
Yeah. So again, there's like this odd dynamic between Bet and Fran. The auction itself again was odd with how she was dressed and like that whole like dancing thing, like, trying to raise up the costs, or the
Mhm.
bidding. Um Again, it was odd that like nobody checked on the man when he collapsed. Like there was no like, like even staff from the nursing home rushing to like check on him.
Mhm.
I don't know. So there's like odd beats to this episode. But I do like it better than last week, I believe.
Mhm.
So I think I'll give it a 3.5. I don't know. What do you think? What are you doing?
I agree with everything you said. I like it better than last week, but I don't love this episode. A lot of it doesn't make a lot of sense. The timing is weird. The interactions between the characters is weird. It's just, eh. It's not one I go out of my way to rewatch. I'm not sure I want to go as high as a 3.5, because I'm like looking back and like actually apparently I only gave one episode this season a 3.5. And I think I like that one slightly better than this one. So
Hmm.
I think I'm gonna give it a 3.25. Like this isn't science, it's kind of an art, if that.
Yeah,
Um, I don't know. I just meh.
yeah,
That's sort of my summary of the episode. Meh.
yeah. Totally fair.
All right. Do you have anything else you want to talk about?
I do not.
All right. Well, that's all we have for you today. We hope you had a fine time with us as we revisited The Nanny. Join us next time when we'll be discussing episode 99, The Heather Diblow Story.
If you'd like to reach us on social media, you can find us on Twitter at Nanny Revisited. You can also send us email at afinetimenannyrevisited@gmail.com. Have a great week.